Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population and with little or no meaningful engagement leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say. Constitutional reform has become a major topic of national discourse in Nigeria, reflecting the growing demand for a legal and political framework that better serves the interests of its diverse population. Since gaining independence in 1960, Nigeria has undergone multiple constitutional changes. Yet, many citizens and stakeholders argue that the current 1999 constitution, originally drafted under military rule, does not fully reflect the democratic aspirations of federal realities of the country. From issues of devolution of power and state policing to electoral reforms and, of course, protection of fundamental human rights, the push for constitutional reform is rooted in a desire for more effective governance, national unity, and social economic development. It's another beautiful week, another beautiful episode on your favorite primetime show, Ways. My name remains Osaiwa Mesale, and today we're discussing constitutional reforms, what it means for Nigerians, right? As simple as that. Now, remember, Ways is all about you. You are the wine Ways, so be a part of the conversation every single day. You can add your voice to the discussion. Please do head onto our YouTube channel. It's growing every day, so be part of that growth and subscribe to the channel. Like, share, invite families and friends to watch and follow us live. When we open the phone lines, we'd really love to hear your thoughts on this topic. As always, let me allow you ponder on my quote for the day. It says, "To make Nigeria work better, we must refine our constitution to reflect true federalism. Now, the center is too burdened. We must rethink the structure." And this was from our very own President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. All right, we'll delve into the conversation on constitutional reforms much later. But first, I'm off on a break. When I come back, I'll let you in on my news interests for the day. Stay with me. All right, thanks for staying tuned. Now, we'll start off the news segment by this very interesting conversation. Now, the Lagos State government presented retirement bond certificate that was worth 1.52 billion to 798 public service retirees, underscoring its dedication to supporting workers post-retirement. Now, the bond certificate ceremony on Monday marked the 110th batch of beneficiaries under the state's contributory pension scheme. The disbursement is part of a broader long-term commitment to ensure the financial security of public servants after their years of service, right? It's, of course, secured now, and this was said by the Director General of the Lagos State Pension Commission, Babalola Obilana. He described the event as a testament of the government's unwavering commitment to fulfilling its pension obligation. He noted that Lagos had built one of the most effective pension systems in Nigeria despite economic challenges. And beyond administration, he stated that the Commission is also focusing on financial literacy for retirees to help them make informed decisions about their post-service investments. This is good. This is really good. I'm hoping that, I can get someone, a financial expert, someone that is grounded in the topic of pension and retirement and all of that, to just come break down what this would mean, for the people, the beneficiaries, 798 of them. We're hoping that, other states will follow suit, and we're hoping that, we get to that Nigeria where service, is rewarded, right? And maybe that might just, curb the looting and all of that we see all the time. But yeah, that's the story for that. Now I'll move on to the next conversation, the Socio-Economic Right and Accountability Project. That's SERAP. They filed a lawsuit against the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission over its plan to increase the salaries of top political and public office holders in the country. SERAP is asking the court to declare the proposed salary hike for the president, vice president, governors, their deputies, and lawmakers unlawful and inconsistent with the Nigerian constitution. And the RMAFC, that's the chairman, Mohammed Bello, had on August 18 announced the commission's proposal to raise the pay, describing their current salaries as paltry and insisting that the review package was fair, realistic, and sustainable. The group is seeking an order of the injunction restraining RMAFC from implementing any upward review, and another compelling the commission to instead reduce salaries and allowances of political office holders to reflect current economic realities. Now, according to SERAP, allowing the pay rise would violate fundamental principles of equality and non-discrimination enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution and international human rights obligation. The organization further argued that reviewing salaries downward would be more consistent with the rule of law and, of course, with public interests. So this argument about salary increment, when I saw it, I just held my chest. I said, what? How can they be thinking of salary increment for an already bloated system? But hey, this is not even for me to say. I think SERAP does not need to tell the government that you have to have humanity when you're taking certain kinds of decisions, right? I mean, as small business owners, some of us don't even pay ourselves salaries just to be able to afford to pay other people, their salaries on a monthly basis, not to even talk of, okay, you are in a government where everything you're doing, it is about borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and yet you're still thinking of getting an increased pay for people that are already enjoying an overbloated system. It doesn't make any sense. If you ask me, I would say that we need to get to that point in our government where people are actually working not for pay. They are working to just help the system to grow. I wish we can get to that point where politicians are not working for money, but they will tell you that really, they don't really, if you go and check the money that they collect, is really nothing. But you see, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of benefiting the system, there's a lot of conflict of interest, because a lot of them would also set up companies, right? Would I call them modular companies or whatever, they'll be siphoning contracts to and awarding contracts to and all of that. Like, there's just so much, there's so much, what's it called? Illegalities that is embedded in the way our systems is being run today. So now adding this increment is just worsening the situation. We're still arguing around 77,000 monthly income as minimum wage. How it does not sustain people, then you're now adding other things. It makes no sense. All right, so we're going to move on to our next and final story for the evening. Now, Sowore blast DSS for trying to deactivate his Facebook account. The activist and publisher Omoyele Sowore has criticized the federal government after the Department of State Service on Sunday asked Meta, the parent company of Facebook, to deactivate his account over a post he made against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Recall that DSS had earlier on Saturday written to X and given the corporation 24 hours to delete Showere's tweet, and that described Tinubu as a criminal. And of course, DSS described the statements as defamatory and threatening to national security. But Showere, of course, has vowed, he's a very interesting fellow. He's vowed not to take that post down. And of course, Showere said that the service has extended the sanction request to Facebook. So yeah, that's that. We'll take a break. When we come back from that break, we'll continue the conversation on constitutional reform. Stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we'll connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. Now, Nigeria's constitution is meant to be the guiding document for governance and, of course, the protection of citizens' rights. Yet many Nigerians feel disconnected from it, either because it does not fully reflect their realities or because reforms are slow and often driven by politicians rather than the people. Now, in recent years, conversations on constitution reform have grown louder with demands for a document that better serves Nigeria's diverse people. So joining me tonight is Cynthia Mbamalu. She's the Director of Programs at IAGA Africa. And yes, she's joined me with... Cynthia, you should have told me to wear my red glasses, so we'll be twinning on our glasses.
I know, I should have told you.
How are you, Cynthia?
I'm good, thank you. Good to see you again.
Yes, so always a pleasure having you. Oh yeah, Cynthia, tell me, why does this constitution reform, why does it matter?
Wow, the Constitution is the mother of all laws. It's the mother and the father of all laws. It's the parent law of the land. And that is where every other law derives its power, its life, and its operationality. So basically, the Constitution is so important to us that whatever is in the Constitution is there, and it governs and regulates how government is structured, how the system is built. It regulates how our rights are either protected, how our rights are facilitated or enabled. It can also be an instrument to limit or restrict fundamental rights if we're not vigilant as a people. That is also what sets up how governance functions, or how government itself is structured. So be it the three arms of government, which is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. That's the three arms of government, or the three levels of government, or the three tiers, which is the federal, the state, and the local government. The Constitution provides the framework for how government itself is structured and how the system runs. But more importantly, the Constitution is what provides the basis for our fundamental human rights, how we exercise our rights and how our rights are protected, how we interact with each other within the society in different institutions. And then more importantly, the Constitution basically provides the basis for every other law to take life. And so we need to care about the Constitution, because just like saying you're a religious person, be it Christian or Muslim, but you don't have your religious book, so the Bible or the Quran. That's how important the Constitution is. That is what you use to ask the right questions, to demand for accountability, but more importantly, to ensure your sustenance and your ability to function as a human being in your society. So for me, the Constitution is, like I say, is the parent law. It's the grand norm. We say in law, it's the grand norm. It is the law that gives life to every other law. And that's why the Constitution, if you read Section 3, it talks about how any other law that is made that is inconsistent to the Constitution is null and void to the extent of its inconsistencies rather. And so what you see is that the Constitution is so important that anything you do that does not align with the Constitution is null and void, meaning it cannot exist and cannot function. So it is I don't know how else to explain how important it is, but I hope Nigerians understand that we cannot sleep on the Constitution, especially when there's an amendment process ongoing. Because like I said, as the Constitution can protect our rights, it can also be used as a tool
to trample on our rights.
Yes, so we must always look at that document.
Interesting. You know, it's so interesting you were talking, because I remember watching the show on Friday. I was not on air, so my able comrade Choma, she was tackling some military guys, how they just brought a new rule and all of that. And I remember the lawyer vehemently saying that this law is, as far as it's concerned, the Constitution supersedes it, right? It is above it. So whatever it is that is happening in Nigeria, as long as it's not in line with the Constitution, there's already a violation. But you see, this Constitution is supposed to give us stronger democracy, right? It's supposed to allow citizens to influence how power is distributed between both federal, state, and local government. You know, that is supposed to be the power that we have. But currently, right, if you were to look at this Constitution as it stands, right? What are the loopholes? Where are those things that we should be concerned about? Because now, as is ongoing, the reforms and all of that is ongoing, we should be very careful to also ensure that some things don't fall through the cracks, that we are able to spot it and say, these are the areas that we need to touch on. So if you were to look at it as it stands now, what would be those areas of concern that we really must be, shouting about at this point?
Well, I know, like you said from the last conversation, sections 1 sub 3 is clear. Anything that is inconsistent is null and void to the level of its inconsistency. But the Constitution itself is not a perfect document, and that is because if you look at our constitutional history, this Constitution, that's the 1999 Constitution, it's been amended about 5 times, so we have about 5 alterations post 1999. But this was a Constitution that was was a transitional document from the military rule to the democracy we currently live in. And so it is not a perfect document, even though it provides the basis for how we exist and function. So there are opportunities to constantly improve on what is in the Constitution. So when you were talking about what are those basic things, in fact, for me, I always begin from the very basic things of fundamental rights. Earlier you had a conversation around the case from Sarah and talking about they are called
Salary
for
upward
salary,
review.
yes, upward review to be stepped down. Yes, and wait, let's talk about the basic right to education, for instance, right to the right to health care, the right to economic opportunities, the right to equal opportunities. You know, these are rights that are in the Constitution, but as it is categorized under Chapter 2, which is which we usually say in law are not justiciable for I don't know how to explain this. Is the way it is structured in the Constitution, it does not give you a right. It doesn't give you the adequate section to go to court to enforce them when they are violated or infringed. So it is seen more like a directive for state policy. And we're beginning to make arguments that with the level of corruption and the abuse of power and how funds are not properly accounted for in this country, we need to begin to make demands that actually these rights ought to be justiciable, because when you say you have a right to life, what is a right to life when you do not have basic education that can help you build a sustainable business, for instance, to sustain your life? And we're saying that all of these threats are interconnected. So one of the conversations around this is even a review to some of these sections so that some of these socio-economic rights are seen as fundamental rights where citizens can begin to take their governors or their government to court when these rights are not enforced or when these rights are not adequately provided for. And so there's a conversation around representation. Currently in our Constitution, if you think about gender representation conversation, our Constitution is still very silent on providing an enabling space for women to thrive equally as men. The general conversation in the Constitution talks about non-discrimination for both sexes. That's for both men and women. But there are no subsequent provisions to reduce or limit the predominance of one gender when it comes to governance structure, for instance. While the Constitution looks at things like limiting predominance of one religion or one section or one political idea, it does not include sex. So as it is now, the Constitution is silent on equal representation in a sense that there is no dominance of one gender in governance. And that is one of the demands ongoing. There is a proposal currently, it has passed second reading, demanding for reserved seats for women in the national, state, and in the national Senate, in the House of Representatives, and in the state assemblies. So that is another conversation, because at the end, like I said, the Constitution itself is the basis. If it doesn't make that provision, it's difficult to force the system to open up because of our nature. Then issues around citizenship is still a big question. There's a debate around citizenship and residency. We live in a country where you can live in a state, but you cannot enjoy the benefits in that state because you're not an indigene. So what happens to the Nigerian identity as supposedly the paramount identity beyond ethnic identities? So those are conversations around things like residency rights. Can we begin to look at these things so that Nigerians can feel at home wherever they are? If they've lived somewhere, they pay tax there, they exist there, can they also enjoy specific rights as citizens that live there that does not put them at a disadvantage because they are not from that state of origin, as we call it? So there is that. Then there's a bigger question around our federal system, devolving powers to the second tier of government, which is the state government. Currently, the exclusive list, so the way the Constitution is structured, we have the exclusive list. Items under the exclusive list, there are about 66 items under the exclusive list. The exclusive list, only the National Assembly can legislate on issues itemized under the exclusive list. Then we have the concurrent list. Now, the concurrent list contains issues that both the federal, that's National Assembly, and state assemblies can legislate on. And so there are lots of conversation now around, can we begin to look at this to further strengthen our federal system? A system that would work for Nigerians to identify issues that should be within the powers of both the state and government. And so that is another big conversation. And I know within that conversation, we've been hearing things around state police, especially because of the levels of insecurity and some of the complaints that we've had from governors over time that they do not still control the police. So there is a limitation on how well they can efficiently function with them to provide adequate security in their state, which is why you have some states now adopting a vigilante kind of system or a different
Yeah,
security
the
system.
Amotekun
I know
and the
it.
rest.
Yes, the Amotekuns, for instance. Those are measures introduced because of the absence of, the state police, because police as it is currently under the exclusive list. And so one of the demands in this amendment process is for an issue of the police to be moved to the concurrent list so that you have the federal and then the state exercising powers in the control of police for security purposes. I know a lot of citizens are worried about this also because we also have governors that honestly act like emperors and do not believe they are within the law. They believe they are above the law. So there's actually the fear of, are you sure if you have state police, you will not empower some governors to now use the police against the people or use them arbitrarily? And so there is that argument, but we always say you can't throw the baby with the bath water, right? And in the constitutional review, there's always there's an opportunity to always introduce measures to limit excesses, especially excesses that would enable abuse of power and overuse of the police against the people. But I do believe that we've gotten to the level where we should have that conversations because in different federal systems, they adopt different ways. They are different. I mean, every country has its own unique federal system. There is no perfect federal system in the world because countries adapt their federal system to suit their realities, their history, and their realities. But I think we've gotten to a point where we need to have that conversation on, can we devolve more powers to the state? And then the local government. I wanted to mention local government. Most time we forget that local government.
Yeah, because I was just going to say that, what is very key, with this constitutional reform, financial administrative autonomy, that is for independent local elections, and also the governance structure, right? It has to be a way where the state is empowered and also the local governments, they are also empowered. That's what this new bill is proposing. But, Cynthia, let me quickly, just butt in a bit, right? This sixth alteration of the Constitution or amendment, like people would call it, right? As far as I'm concerned, should be one of Nigeria's most ambitious, constitutional reform based on what I have seen. But we've had other reforms, right? I mean, you rightly said, correctly, 5 successful reforms have happened in the past, right? What are we going to do differently that would ensure that it does not take us back to where we are today? What are we doing differently? Because it's not about doing the reforms, right? And the past reforms that have happened, did we follow through in terms of implementation? Because it's one thing for you to have those reforms. It's another thing, right, for a lot of people to begin to adjust to the new constitution to say, this is now how we're going to do things as a way forward. So just to ask, that question, because these are quite ambitious proposals that have come up, with this reform. What are the things that we didn't do right in the 5 previous reforms that, we shouldn't make the same mistake so we don't come back to this point again?
I always tell people that sometimes Nigeria, we operate like things don't work here. We complicate simple issues. Let's put it that way, because in fact, the constitution as it is now, if we had a system where people believe in getting things to work, you could still use this constitution and you would have a Nigeria that everyone would be too amazed and wowed by. But the problem is the absence of political will. And so we have a system where every assembly, we commence a constitutional amendment process. Some are successful, some fail. But the challenges we've had so far is, one, the absence of a political will to have that national conversation on what works for Nigeria. Let's look at local government autonomy, for instance. We've constantly had advocacies for local government autonomy to ensure that both financial and independent, that's both the fiscal and administrative autonomy of the local government, that it functions in the way state government function. However, the demands for local government autonomy has surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, consistently failed at the state level. To amend the constitution, you need 2/3 majority of the National Assembly, that's both Senate and House, and then you need 2/3 of the state assemblies to vote in favor of each proposal. But each time issues around local government autonomy has constantly failed at the state level. And it's unfortunate that we always have that debate because we are back to that conversation. And we want it to work this time so it doesn't become another issue in the next reform process. Basically, we need a lot of Nigerians to follow this process like we've never done before. We need to get aware and informed on what the issues are so that we begin to build a citizens movement that puts pressure on the lawmakers to vote in line with the interest of the people and not with political interest or the interest of a godfather or some power behind the scene controlling the decisions at the different levels of government. So that is one thing I think we can do differently, because every assembly we begin, a lot of the amendments do not make it through, a few go through, but a bigger question is on why these amendments have failed consistently. We do know that local government autonomy, for one, some of them are so contentious that they become major debates. And because of the political interest at play, they never make it through. But we know the importance of having a third tier of government that is independent and delivers democracy and development to the people at the local and the grassroots level. So that is one, citizens movement. We have to follow through. The zonal hearings were concluded, but as soon as National Assembly resumes, there would also be a national public hearing. Can we make a big statement, a bold statement in the national public hearing so that National Assembly members and even the state legislators understand that we, the people, care about these issues? And we can highlight priority issues that we care about, because not every issue is priority. Some of the issues also have political inclination. So we can pick those ones that we think are important. I'm always big on local government because I think we need to get that system of government
local
functional.
government has to be done properly, because local government, as far as I'm concerned, if we had a functioning local government, right, a lot of the things that we complain about, we will not even be complaining about them in Nigeria, because we don't have a local government that is functional. If we do, a lot of the issues that we have, right, it will be a no-brainer, because the local government would naturally just, take care of it. But you see, this one you're saying we should make a bold statement. What are we supposed to do? Go to the National Assembly when they resume to be part of the hearing? Is this something that is open to everybody?
Yes, there will usually be a notice of public hearing and citizens can send in their memos. You can, normally sometimes they provide email addresses, so you can send in your memos to make presentations. So that there is that. The public hearing, as the name entails, is public, it ought to be open. But because National Assembly has its own, when it comes to access, there's a lot of issues around access. It's always important to submit so that you're coming, because you already made a submission and you want to make a presentation. But we're also making a demand for National Assembly to integrate virtual platforms for this public hearing, because not everyone lives in Abuja. We have citizens living across the country, and not everyone participated in the zonal hearings that happened, because it didn't happen at every state. It happened at zonal level. And so there's also that demand, and I think we can, as they resume, we need to amplify this across the media platforms. And citizens, call your lawmakers. Most times we don't engage in phone calls. There are sometimes you call them until they have no other option than to respond, to make that demand that for the public hearing.
They will block your line, Cynthia.
See, we have to try any way we can. Make calls, tweet at them, send in messages, whichever way we can. Go to the people that control them at the state level. There are times that at the state level, there are power bearers that some of these our politicians respect and listen to, camp at their constituency offices. But I think it's just to make that demand that for this national public hearing, we want to have our voices reflected a lot more and amplified. And if you make it only those present at the physical, it will limit participation, because not everyone will be able to travel to Abuja for the national public hearing. So I do believe that it should integrate some virtual participation in a way that people can also send in their contributions and participate online. That is why we have technology, and I do believe that National Assembly should be able to afford to do that. It shouldn't even come at a very high cost, actually, for integrating virtual participation. The other conversation is we need to also inform ourselves around the issues. There's a proposal for reviewing the power of appointment of the INEC chair. It has been a consistent proposal to remove the power of appointment from the president. And make it a more competitive and professional process where people can apply, and there's a public process of selection so that we know that we're bringing in people that are not controlled or loyal to anybody but to the Nigerian people. And so there is that conversation around that. I keep talking about the reserved seat because I do believe that we need to have this bill passed for women. But then beyond these particular conversations, there are other sections like citizenship rights for women. Currently, as a Nigerian woman, only Nigerian men can confer citizenship to their foreign spouses. Nigerian women cannot. And we think that in itself is inequality. And so there's a proposal around the rights of women to also confer citizenship to their foreign spouses. The constitution, the way Nigerian men can. And so there is that. Then I already talked about moving some things from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. I do believe that Nigerians need to educate. We need to constantly educate ourselves around these issues. And then also ensure that we do not have issues sneaking into the constitution that may limit our rights. Because sometimes there are also proposals that are quite suspicious. There are several proposals demanding state creation. And the question is, at this level that we are, is state creation the priority issues for Nigeria, for one? That's the first question. Because a lot of times this state creation conversation keeps coming up. And there are several proposals for a lot more states to be created. But the bigger question is, the states we have functioning, are they economically viable? Currently, under the concurrent list,
Sorry,
and they function without federal allocation.
You know, I need us to go on a break, but you see this state creation, I want to go for the national, what's it called, the hearing, just because of that state creation. Because I need to tell them the state that they need to merge with another state, so that we don't need to have 36 states anymore. But let's go on a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. All right, thanks for staying tuned. If you just tuned in, we're having an amazing conversation with Cynthia. We're discussing constitution reform, right? What it means for Nigerians. Please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us a message on our YouTube link, on WhatsApp, SMS 081-803-84663. You can also call us 07025007749 or 0701424242. Let's hear what you have to say. I mean, Cynthia, I was saying it, but I'm not joking about what I said before we went on the break. Honestly, I want to go to that meeting. There are some states that they should just cancel their existence, right? If you leave it for Osayuame alone, we will go back to regional, regional leadership. We have the South, like all these excessive, recreation of states and all of that. Just picture it. We're already complaining that you have a bloated system. You now have, National Assembly members. You have state assembly members. You have, you have almost like quadrupled, the existing structure just by including maybe 6 or 7 states or whatever it is that they are proposing. So that one should not even be something that should be mentioned. But there's something that they talked about, the 6-year term for presidency, right? Because, say this National Assembly, I believe this constitutional reform, it will go through and things will happen. Because honestly, they have proven to me that, anything that they say, automatically, they're just informing you, but, we know how these things work. But if in the event that, a 6-year, one single term, it's then, is then approved. So are we looking at the current president, extending his 4-year to 6-year and stepping down? Or he will finish his 4 years and then come and do a 6-year term, and then what are we looking at in terms of like the 6-year presidency, one term that is being proposed?
Well, because, like you said, this National Assembly now, please, every Nigerian, please, this is a period of vigilance. We have to really be, put our attention on the National Assembly, because we need to be sure our lawmakers are making laws for us. But so the thing about amendments of the constitution or amendments of laws normally, once a law is passed, it becomes effective from the date it is passed. It is not retroactive in nature. And so if normally amendments to the constitution, by all intent and purpose, should be concluded towards, by next year at the most, because you need to go to the states for their votes and then back to the president for assent. So what this would mean would be most likely it could take effect from the 2027 election, because remember the next election is early in the year, it's February 2027. So most likely it would be effective from the next administration, depending on the timeline that it is passed and the date of final application. I'll give an example with when the Not Too Young to Run was signed into law. The bill was signed into law in 2018. It became active for the 2019 elections, meaning that before 2019, if you were less than 30, you couldn't contest for office. But the bill was signed in 2018. So it was signed around before primaries had commenced. And so Nigerians who were 25 years could contest around in the primaries and could contest in the elections. And so it was a timeline. But if the bill was signed later than those activities, it means it would have been applicable by the next elections. And so that's how it operates. It depends on the timeline from which it is signed. Now, I understand the argument for 1 year, 6 years single term. And we've seen in some countries they have that. The only question a lot of us have is one, what's the rationale for that and for the proposal for that? And like we talked about the implementation purpose. If, for instance, the bill is passed this year, or an amendment is done this year, it could have its own implications because it could mean an extension of this current term. But I do know that with the way the process works, it will be next year most likely that will conclude on that process because of the state level. And I think it's a debate for Nigerians. Maybe for our trade, I have my sentiments around it, but I have my sentiments around it because I am worried about the political interest influencing its application. However, because I also don't want this to be about me, the rationale is if it gives someone, whomever wins the presidency, a period of 6 years. After 6 years, if we're not satisfied with you, we go to another elections and we vote you out. But I don't think it's not as popular as some other bills. Like the state police is becoming a lot more popular, actually. Than that. And so normally you also rate the popularities of specific bills. So that's what I would say about this 6-year term. I'm a bit wary about it just because when it comes to politics in Nigeria, a lot of times politics is done in such a way that we don't look at how that impacts on the people. A lot of times it's influenced by political interest without thinking for the future. And that is where we have a lot of problems. We take decisions for things to happen today, not thinking about tomorrow. And we need to change that system or that mode of operation to ensure that whatever we're doing, we're a lot more careful on how we make and implement laws so that we do not run into major issues in the future. And so that will be my take on that. But I do believe Nigerians need to read through. There are several bills actually to amend the constitution.
So I just want to touch on another one. The fact that they're talking legislative immunity and structure. So proposal includes granting legislators immunity for words spoken in plenary or committee sessions and formalizing legislative bureaucracies analogous to executive and judicial commissions. You know, these people's legal terminologies, you people need to help us break for the common men like us. So what does this mean? What does this mean, legislative immunity?
Yes, so the journey for this.
So these are lawmakers, so they can just do whatever they like. Is that what they are trying to tell us?
So the way the proposal was made in previous assembly was actually to protect lawmakers for what they say in the chambers or in the floor of the House or the Senate. And at first, that was the intention, that this is because sometimes you speak as a lawmaker and then you're penalized or sanctioned or you're blacklisted or you face unnecessary attacks, political attacks more or less. And so there was that thing around immunity for what's spoken, for what's spoken in the process of doing their work. So for presentations they make or decisions that they make or even accusations that they make. And there is that. But you know, that's the essence of the initial proposal. However, there's been other conversations around giving immunities the way, you know, currently the president and the governor, there's immunity for the period of time you are in office. And there's also that conversation. And I do believe that myself, like every other Nigerian, or most, maybe not every other, a lot of Nigerians are not keen about that. Because we understand immunity from speaking when you speak, not to be penalized for speaking your truth or for making debate on the floor of the House. We understand that because as a lawmaker, you are our representatives, and we don't want you to speak, and because you've spoken on behalf of your people or for your people, you're penalized for that. So that is a lot more rational, and we understand that we need some sort of protection so that lawmakers that speak up, or even what we call whistleblowing, you know, that reveal any issues around accountability or what have you, and they would not face untold hardship because of their positions on several issues. Because at the end, they are representing people and there should be freedom of speech, even as a legislator. So that level of immunity is what a lot of us, we're believing that is what we want to have. That is what we were pushing for. That is what we're a lot more interested in, not immunity from criminal or civil criminal liability. Because we're already saying that in itself is problematic, even for the executive. Because you have people who commit several crimes, occupying an executive office as a governor or president, and they are not tried. Most times they're out of office, they are still not tried unless they're in the wrong camp. And that system of impunity has enabled a culture of abuse of power, a culture of criminality that is a threat to our own democracy. And so for me, I'm not even big on immunity to protect any office holder from criminal liability, because I do believe that we're all citizens, regardless of what seat you sit on. If you commit a crime, if you do something wrong, you should be held accountable. That way, no one else who comes to office or comes into power would want to do that. So I'm not big on any immunity that absolves office holders from criminal liability or what have you. That's not what I'm keen on. And that's why I said it's important we follow this conversation, because the conversations earlier had always been around immunity protecting from the words from protecting you when you speak on issues in the National Assembly. Especially because now you also have people who are penalized for speaking up. They are either suspended, and a lot of shoddy processes happen. This is not the first time it's happening in this assembly. With Senator Natasha, for instance, that in the instance of that happened. We've also seen in previous assemblies where we've had some lawmakers that were also suspended, even though they had victory in court. Just that this time around is a lot more political, and I'm not even so it leaves people vulnerable, especially when you're not in the right camp. When I say right camp now, if you're not speaking the language that people want you to speak, those who control the power behind the scene want you to speak, then you'll be targeted. And I think that is rather the immunity I'm more interested in, so that our lawmakers can be confident to speak up at any point in time for issues that affect us, to reveal the
Constitution. Okay. So
yes, on the Constitution, yes.
Okay, one final question before I hear your final thoughts on this, right? Because one of the biggest challenges that we have as a people, we have very weak institutions, right? Very, very weak institutions. How is this constitutional amendment, right? How is it going to help to prioritize, institutions that are actually supposed to, would I say, hold the interest of the people? So we're talking the judiciary, for instance. We're talking strengthening our institutions that control democratic processes like INEC, constitutions that controls our finances and what the activities around finance, like the EFCC, ICPC, right? All these bodies that are supposed to be the fabric that holds us together and keeps us, in check. How is this constitutional reform helping, to rejig the autonomy in those, institutions, so that we can have a more balanced structure that would checkmate excesses of politicians, excesses of... And so this one is not even an issue of willpower. If you have willpower, you don't have willpower. Somebody will help you, put you in check, How do we do that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned this because the Constitution helps us build or restructure our institutions. And let me give a simple example with the Electoral Commission, Independent National Electoral Commission, and then the State Independent Electoral Commissions, that's CX. Because remember that INEC conducts national elections, CX conduct local elections. And I'm so passionate about local government autonomy, which includes credible local government elections. One of the entry points to achieving that is the process of amendments. As it is now, currently for the INEC national, the chair, the commissioners, the resident electoral commissioners, they are appointed by the president. And the major demand has been consistently, in fact, from as far back as Waste Committee report years ago, remove the power of appointments from the president and put it in a more independent process. Because there's the tendency where, especially in Nigeria, in some countries this could work, but we are, like I say, we're special people. I don't know how to explain this. We're special people where people think because you appointed me, somehow I need to bow to you.
I need to be loyal to you.
Or be loyal to you, I think it's that double leg culture that we have. And it's not working for us. And that's why there's been a demand consistently. One way to strengthen these institutions is to remove the power of appointment from the president and put that in a separate system. Now, there are several proposals on a system that could work. There's a proposal about having people apply so that that people that are applying for this force, people that are interested. So, like how you screen to get the best for your companies is what we want to achieve for the Electoral Commission. And to have a committee that has representatives from both professional bodies, including the National Assembly, and representatives which includes civil society and the media, so different professional bodies, and to have a committee made up of different members that will be responsible for the screening before the final process goes to National Assembly. There's that agitation for that because the belief is if you have a different system for appointment, it could strengthen the independence of the Electoral Commission. That way, you don't need to depend on the political will of whomever sits at the chair, the office of the chair, or at the office of the chair, or at the state commissioner level, or the state. Same also for the State Independent Electoral Commission. We also there are proposals for amendment 1 for fiscal autonomy for CX, the State Independent Electoral Commission. The way we've achieved fiscal autonomy that's fiscal, now that's financial, fiscal autonomy for the Electoral Commission, INEC at the national level. To do that also for CX, fiscal autonomy for them, administrative autonomy to strengthen them so that they are not limited to the whims and caprices, or they are not subjected to the whims and caprices of the governor. And then also review the appointment of the chair and the commissioners of the State Independent Electoral Commission. We do believe that is important in strengthening CX to function to deliver credible election at the local level. So that's the other one. Now, the conversation around other institutions, honestly, a matter of institution, normally the one way to approach it in the Constitution is administrative autonomy and fiscal autonomy. If people have better control of the monies they receive, that way they are not threatened by budget issues. They know that this is what I'm afforded by the Constitution. Then the other part is administrative. The powers to hire and fire, to control their system so that you don't have externals like political interest influencing how the institutions run. That, for me, those are key approaches that can be taken to strengthen institutions. And I want to talk about state police because I don't think it's just about moving police from exclusive list to concurrent list. It's also about a review that ensures that the police at both the federal and state level, whatever the system would be, that they would also be independent and loyal to Nigerians, to the Nigerian people, and not to the president or the governor.
Or the governor that is here.
Yeah, or the governor at the state level. So these are important approaches that can be taken to strengthen institutions. But a lot of Nigerians really want a new INEC, an INEC that they can trust. So there's also that call for whatever is happening before the amendment to the Constitution, At the moment, INEC's chair there will be a new appointment soon. It's also that Nigerians need to start making demand. Whoever they are appointing must be non-partisan, must not belong to any party, present or past. Must be persons of integrity. There's
And
nothing
he must have a very
there.
clean record. But, I mean, Cynthia, we
Clean
have just
record,
1
yes.
minute to go. If you had a final thing to just cap up all you've said, please, in 1 minute.
The Constitution is very important to us. Every Nigerian should have a copy of the Constitution today. Read it, internalize the provisions, and use it as a powerful tool to demand for your rights. That's one. The second, we cannot afford to stay away from the amendment process. Let us engage the Constitution review process, especially as the National Assembly resumes in September. We need to make that bold statement as a people that we want a constitution that protects us as Nigerians and guarantees our sustainability and the development of our democracy.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to come to Abuja because of you. We'll come and check that that constitutional reform.
Please do.
But thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure having you. All right, so the Constitution is not just a legal document. It is a foundation of Nigeria's democracy. If it fails to reflect the needs and aspirations of the people, then governance itself becomes very weak. Constitution reform offers an opportunity to reset and strengthen Nigeria's democracy. As citizens, our role is clear. We must demand reforms that put people first, participate actively in the process, and continue to occupy our office as the office of the citizen. We must continue to occupy that office. Thank you again to our guest, Cynthia, an amazing time with her. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to share this link to someone that needs this. Every Nigerian needs to hear that there is an ongoing constitution reform happening, and you need to be part of it. Don't be quiet. Share the link and share to everyone, and let us engage our lawmakers to be sure that they are protecting our interests. If you missed this quote from our president, he says, "To make Nigeria work better, we must refine our constitution to reflect true federalism. The center is too burdened. We must rethink the structure." And this was from the president. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your evening.